G'day, ZiggyD here, back with a bit of a guide for my Ethereal Knives Scion on the Nemesis League. I've had a number of requests to explain how to gear this character because although it's not extremely difficult, it's not easy. It's not one of the simpler builds to gear. Now, I actually had the question about how hard is this to gear, you know, do I need to do a heap of trading to do this? And to give you an idea, to put this in perspective, I made this character in a new league and it was my first character in that new league. So everything on this character has been self-found or traded through some trading by just basically selling things I found. So this character is self-made. It doesn't take a bunch of really expensive uniques. In fact, the only unique I've ever used on this build is the Ethereal Reward, and that costs maximum like 1 chaos. I think I paid a chaos for it. So pretty cheap to build. You can spend a lot of currency on gear in the end game, and that's the case with any build really. So I'd put it at the pretty much average to gear sort of character. It's about average. It's not as simple as something like a cheap-ass summoner, and it's not as expensive as making a high-end discharger, but it still takes some thought and some planning because it needs a few specific stats that you don't often go for in builds. So in this video I'll just go over each gear slot and talk about what you need to look for at endgame and also some extra considerations for to take on board while leveling. So this character runs Eldritch Battery and Mana Shield. That means mana and mana regen is incredibly important for us. We try to do things like run maxed level Arctic Armor, and we have pretty expensive set of skills and things like that. So we want to get as much mana regen as possible. These are all things to consider. We also use Iron Reflexes, so we do have a bit of flexibility in gear. For example, you can see I'm using Evasion Energy Shield chest piece here, and this actually is pretty important for using on a 5 link as well, because it makes rolling the correct sockets much easier. So, let's, on that note, start with the chest piece. On a 5 link, you want to go for an Evasion Energy Shield piece of armor. The reason for this is you're going to be wanting to roll 2 off-color slots. You're going to be wanting to get one blue, 2 green, and 2 red. On an Evasion Energy Shield, this isn't too bad to do. It's not too bad to get 2 red off-color slots. Pretty easy to do. You can also do this on an Armor ES piece as well, and that'll take a few chromatics to get. I think I ended up spending about 20, maybe 40 chromatics trying to get that, but I eventually got it. I maybe got a little bit lucky. However, once you move on to a 6 link, and we eventually do want to go to a 6 link on this build because a lot of the power for EK comes from the links, the things that you link it to, and I'll be eventually switching to a 6 link as soon as I get my Empower to at least level 2, which takes a very long time. I've been grinding for quite a few hours already, and it's only that tiny little bar of XP that I've done on it. It takes forever to level that skill gem. But once we switch to a 6 link, I'm pretty sure I want to go back to an Armor ES chest piece because we're going to be running 3 reds, and getting 3 reds on an Evasion Energy Shield chest piece is very difficult because that's 3 off colors. So Armor ES will be the way to go for that. In terms of your other stats, you just want to get your standard life and resist and things like that. This chest is terrible. You can see those stats are rubbish, but I'm only really using it for this 5 link, and I'm pretty much just decided to not try and get a better 5 link until I actually just go ahead and get a 6 link, so just saving a bit of money that way. But in general, you just want to get your life and resist. Any extra mana rolls are helpful, but mostly you want to get Armor and Energy Shield or Evasion Energy Shield mods that increase both of those, because that's going to increase your Energy Shield slash mana as well. We're getting that conversion. So from my 90 Energy Shield, that makes a big difference to my mana. We go from like 1900 to 2300 just from that 90 energy shield plus the extra mana on there, so makes a very big difference, and I think that covers the chest piece. Pretty simple slot to gear. Now on the helmet, you know, I'm running Armor, Energy Shield, and pretty much every other slot except for the shield, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. Helmet's really good. I run my Cast on Damage Taken setup because it's an Armor, Energy Shield. It's pretty easy to roll 4 red sockets, so that's pretty nice to do. And the armor is obviously helping keep your armor from being rubbish. 20% is still very low, but it stops it from, you know, if we ran just pure Energy Shield, we probably wouldn't have enough armor to stay alive from even tiny hits. But in terms of your helmet, again, just the same deal, life and a resist, and Armor Energy Shield mods on that to increase that as much as possible, which I don't have. This helmet isn't very good either, but just hanging on to this for a little while until we get an upgrade. On your gloves, you don't really want damage mods. I've got a damage mod on here, but again, just same armor resist, armor, energy, shield, gear, and all that same jazz. Pretty much the same. They're all basic armor slots. Nothing too much to consider. On all of these, because they're dual energy shield type armor, so they have that energy. They have access to energy shield type armor suffixes and prefixes. If you can get extra mana on them, then that can be a bonus. But for the most part, you're going to want a dual armor, energy shield, roll, life, and 3 resist if possible. But if you have to settle for some extra mana, it's certainly not going to hurt your build, because mana does translate into effective life for us. I'll actually go ahead and switch on my my current auras so you can see we have about 1200 extra effective life from our mana pool using the mana shield / mind over matter keystone. Same deal with boots, however move speed is very handy for being a bit more mobile with EK. Also, because we use lightning warp, move speed helps the cast speed of that. So if I lightning warp here, the 20% move speed factors in to determining how quickly you actually do that teleport, how long the cast speed is essentially on that teleport. So having a bit of move speed is very helpful for teleporting around, but also just for keeping yourself in good position. EK is a conal attack, so it's very important to make sure that you have mobs in this sort of area, and if they're starting to surround you, you're going to want to move back and sort of keep them to one side of you. So having that move speed is pretty important. I'm running 20% move speed for a total of 23% move speed there from some passives, and the Karui ward as well helps out a little bit. So try and get that maxed out as much as possible, because it is fairly important on this character. And of course, just all of the standard mods as well apply to the boots. So now things start getting a little bit more interesting. Let's start off with the shield. This shield is amazing. However, it's not exactly what we want for our build. Look at the stats on this shield. This shield is... it's hilarious, because the stats on it are so perfect. They're like all perfect rolls, but it's a terrible base item. This is the ultimate troll item, because I found this the other day. It's on a terribly low level shield, for one, so the energy shield is rubbish. It's super low, and the spell damage is also super low. 5%? Yeah, pretty bad. In general, what you actually want to go for is spell damage on your shield, defensive mods, increases to energy shield, and most importantly, mana regeneration. I have some items with mana regeneration, but I'd like to get some more. This is a huge deal, because when we run Arctic Armor, look at Arctic Armor. An additional 168.9 mana drained when moving. Now, we always have Arctic Armor up on this build, so that takes a lot of mana. Total of something like almost 200 mana, so very, very large mana cost. As you can see, my mana regeneration is about 200. I think we're actually in deficit mana at the moment. Yeah, we're actually dropping a little bit, so getting those mana regeneration mods is a huge deal. To illustrate this ring here has... it has some energy shield and intelligence and stuff like that, but it has a huge 49% increased mana regeneration mod. Now, you can get this on your shield, you can get this on your wand, you can get this on your rings, you can get it on your jewelry, and you can, I think maybe you can get it on helmets. I'm not 100% sure about that, but try and get that wherever you can, because look at how much difference this makes. This actually scales clarity as well. So if I take this off, we drop all the way down to 159, which means we can't support Arctic Armor properly anymore. We're going to run out of mana, and it also, you know, it reduces our effective life, because that regen of the mana is what keeps the mana pool up, so we can keep taking damage to our mana rather than to our life. So that's super important. Try and get that on your shield. So I had to drop spell damage in this in my shield slot, simply because I found this amazing defensive shield, and I couldn't not run this. But ideally, you want spell damage, mana regeneration, and a few defensive mods on there. Things like block and stuff aren't really important in this build. In fact, I don't really rate block at all. And the reason we're mostly using a shield is for the extra mana buffs and the extra spell damage and things like that. That's why I run a pure energy shield as well. It's supposed to be a big source of extra mana for our build, but since I'm running such a low level one, it's only 56, but hopefully I can upgrade this soon to a better one with spell damage, and that'll have over 100 energy shield, maybe 200 or something like that. But that's what you want to go for on the shield. Next up, we'll talk about the belt. You want to run a rustic sash pretty much on this build. That's one of your biggest damage buffs from gear. You can get, you know, up to 24% extra physical damage. To give you an idea, I'm currently 3.8, and if I take the rustic sash off, we drop all the way down to 3.5. So it's a pretty nice, pretty hefty DPS buff from this guy. Otherwise, you can just get your defensive stats from your belt, just besides that base inherent physical damage buff. Next up, you guys saw I'm running the Karui Ward. This is an item you can pick up from level 5 and pretty much run until end game, until you find an amazing GG spellcast amulet. And I haven't found one of those yet. I've been looking on the forums and I've been looking at different amulets, and I haven't found one good enough to justify dropping the Karui Ward. The main thing for this, we get a little bit of move speed. Strength can help us with Iron Grip if we're running that, but we're not actually running Iron Grip in this build, so it's not a big deal. Accuracy rating is obviously unimportant, but the projectile speed is the main reason I'm still using this, because that makes a big difference. 30% means the difference between, if we take this off, you know, kind of not quite getting to the edge of our screen to shooting off screen. So projectile speed's a pretty big deal. I'm actually not quite the same with my inventory open there. Yeah, you can see the short range without the Karui Ward versus the much longer range with it on. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal for EK. It just makes EK a lot safer and easier to use. And it's just such a cheap slot to gear up with the Karui Ward. It's hard to find a really good amulet. Eventually, though, we want to run spell damage, mana regeneration, and maybe some defensive stats on there as well. But we'll try and go as offensive as possible on the amulet, since we'll probably have everything else sorted out anyway. Obviously, on the rings, we want to get as much mana regeneration as possible, life and resist. Extra mana and energy shield are a bonus, though the energy shield mods on jewelry is pretty low and probably not really worth going for too much. I actually try to stack a little bit of rarity on this build, because I think everyone should try and get a little bit of rarity, at least on their pre-end game gear, their pre-final GG items, because it's going to help you get to those GG items. So I have a few pieces of rarity on here, just bringing myself up to, I think, about 100% when you factor in the item rarity gem as well from culling with Power Siphon. And otherwise, just go your defensive stats and things like that. As you can see, I have pretty bad rings. This one's okay. I really need to upgrade this one soon to get some mana regen as well, some more life and things like that. Okay, and then finally the wand. The wand gets pretty interesting. I have a nice wand here, and it was pretty expensive, but I want to get a much better wand for this build. Not necessarily a better one for everyone, but a much better one for this build. Ideally, we want spell damage. Crit strike isn't a big deal in this build, so I can actually drop that and save a lot of currency. My GG wand will actually probably be cheaper than this one was, and this one was like 10, 15 chaos or something like that. But we want as high mana regeneration as possible. We want as high spell damage as possible. We want as high cast speed as possible. It's going to make EK a lot easier to use. And we want as much projectile speed as possible. Here's my plan for improving my gear. I find a wand with these stats, including a good projectile speed roll especially. Then we drop the Karui Ward. We get a really nice spellcast amulet. Well, we get a really nice spellcast amulet, then drop the Karui Ward. And then once Empower hits level 2, we're going to go for the Armor Energy Shield 6-link with good stats, and that'll be pretty much GG for this build. Obviously, I still want to do some minor upgrades to my helmet and my gloves and probably my boots as well overall, and my shield. Everything needs an upgrade eventually, but those other slots are kind of on par for what we need, but we do want to try and change this wand over to a projectile speed, cast speed, spell damage one without crit and also with mana regen, because that's going to make a big difference in the build. And everywhere else, we'll try and get as much mana regen as possible. If I can get that on pretty much every slot I can get it on, I'll be very happy, because we can run a level 20 Arctic Armor, which is going to make us immune to fire and physical damage, basically, and it's going to help with our survivability a lot as well. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get some more spell damage and make things a bit tougher as well, deal a little bit more damage. So, hopefully you guys find this helpful. The main thing is keep an eye out for that mana regen. The mana regen and making sure you have enough energy shield on your gear to actually give you a sizable mana pool, because without that sizable mana pool, mana shield becomes pretty useless. You need at least 700 buffer room. As you can see, I have 1200 and this feels a bit more comfortable. So focus on trying to get that regen, trying to get that extra energy shield, and then get all your main defensive stats and things like that. And then eventually try and get some spell damage, cast speed, and projectile speed. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.